Kevin always checks on
Oh,
his
good for
phone to
him.
make sure. Yeah.
Good.
You see us? Awesome. Awesome. Well, hello, Facebook family. Here we are. It is Tuesday, September 8th. I hope you've all had a wonderful 3-day Labor Day weekend. Kevin and I certainly did. And we would be outside today, except for the air quality is once again not good. And okay, I'm getting that feedback again. Give me one quick second.
There we go. Much better.
I changed the setting. I seriously changed the setting and put it on mute so we wouldn't hear that feedback. And somehow Facebook decided it was better if it was on. So, whatever. We roll with the punches because it's a highly dynamic environment. We're flexible and adaptable. And those of you who worked with me at Sleep Train Arena know exactly what I'm talking about. So, and anyone in healthcare, which, that's my background as well. So I'm Kim Brown-Sims, and you have arrived on Pricked Live. Pricked, have you ever been surrounded by a room full of pricks?
I definitely have.
Mike is our guest. I'll introduce him in just a minute. But Mike, have you ever been surrounded by a room full of pricks?
Well, I'll just put it this way. I was born in Washington, D.C., so we'll just leave it at that.
Okay, I love it. So the whole point in this program is to figure out what you do with those pricks and how you choose to respond to them. And we have been getting some amazing stories and some great feedback about how people have handled pricks in the past. And so one of the things that and I'm actually just gonna put it out there right at the beginning, Kevin, we talked about it a little bit, but if you're listening today and you have interest in us kind of documenting the strategies that we're learning for you to be able to download and either listen to and or read, please put it in the comments and let us know if there's any interest in that, because like I said, we're really getting some kind of cool strategies for how people deal with being pricked. So
Yeah, that's very true. The conversation really is about overcoming pricks.
Kevin really wants to go with the overcoming pricks title.
And through both of our careers, we've had many opportunities to address different issues in our lives, personal and work lives. And we've got some things to say, which is why we started this Facebook live stream, so that we could start a conversation, or rather continue a conversation, and figure out how we can really create a movement behind. For me, it's healing the world, but really there are things. It's got to start one person at a time. And if there's something that we can do, any insights that we might be able to share with you, we'd love to do that. We just need to know, kind of what format you all would like to hear this in. So,
yeah, so far it's been hugely successful from the perspective of we've been inviting some amazing guests and they've been telling us their stories. And here's the reality. We're all connected as humankind. And the reality is we have all been pricked in some way, shape, or form. And I frequently tell the story of, I'm a nurse. I've been a nurse for 35 years. I've pricked a ton of people. I've started IVs and done lab draws and given shots. And, there's an old saying that says nurses get you in the end, and they're talking about getting a shot. And so, or giving a shot. So, we all have had some level of prick, and good, bad, or indifferent. Typically when you have a pain point, it inspires some action. And we want to take the positive actions that lead us all to a better place, and spread that information throughout the world. And we've had some pretty interesting topics that have been covered. Do you want to share a few? I'm putting you on the spot, but do you remember a few?
In general, we've been talking about, for me, it's been really focused on aspects of racism. We've talked about aspects of sexism. We've talked about just individual hurts. The conversation started, one of our first topics was Kim's initial break at the age of 32, when she found out that she'd been adopted. So, but the concept is how do we get better? How do we overcome, and how do we get better? How do we move on in a positive light? So that's really what we want to continue the conversation with. Is not allowing yourself to get bogged down in negative feelings because of something that's happened to you. You can overcome it, and we think we might be able to lend a voice to help.
Right. And the other aspect that we're encouraging is conversation. So, there's something called constructive conflict, and people typically take conflict as the negative connotation, but the reality is conflict can be very positive, and it's just an opportunity to have more dialogue, because if we don't get a clear understanding of where another person stands, or where they're coming from, what their perspective is derived from, their life experiences, how they were raised, cultural implications, then we'll never know. We will only be looking through it, through the situation from the lens that we have. So at this juncture, I really want to introduce our guest, who is absolutely amazing. So we're thrilled today to have the incomparable Mike Ryan. Mike, thank you so much for joining us today. And Mike, I'm just going to read a little bit of his incredibly impressive bio, but Mike is a second generation and serial entrepreneur, which just pulls the strings of my heart, because I've been an entrepreneur for many years, but a closet entrepreneur. So I love Mike because he is out of the closet, so to speak. I know you can take that however you want, Mike. A former hospital, health system, and health tech CEO with 35 years of experience. So, we've been hanging out kind of in the same groups for a while within the largest health systems in the United States. He is currently the chairman of the Executive Impact Group, which is an international advisory firm with clients on 5 continents. I'll also say that he's collaborated with thousands of founders, venture capitalists, board of directors, and family offices in scaling hundreds of companies, including 8 unicorns with a market cap of $150 billion. So very impressive. And in his spare time, he does other things like being a digital health pioneer, serving as chair for the UCSF DOCSF Advisory Board, founding or advising 500 companies. He serves on the American Red Cross, the American Heart Association, American College of Healthcare Executives, and it goes on and on and on. So, Mike, thank you so much for joining us today. Welcome to the show. And what do you want to share with us?
Yeah, well, thank you for having me. It's I've been able to watch a few of the shows over the decades that you guys been on the air, but
the whole 6 times. Mike, turn your volume up just a little bit. It's low in my ear. How about you? Yeah.
Just being off completely, or no?
Yeah, actually, that sounds better to me. What do you think,
Does it
Kevin?
sound better for you? Yeah, I don't want to mess up, and then you can actually see most of the contours of my.
Of that beautifully sculpted noggin.
Yeah. And I tell you, my son, who's soon to be 16, said, "Dad, grow your hair," because I shave it. And the reason I shave it is that once I got pricked with a bad haircut. And this wasn't on my script, but I'll tell you. So anyway, I go into a well-known chain, and my son would sit on my head and on my shoulders and steer my head like Ratatouille. Go this way, Dad. Go that way. When he was 1 year to, whatever, 4 years on my shoulders. And finally, I kept getting my hair cut so he wouldn't, grab on like Ratatouille and, go like that. And I once got a haircut so bad, I walk out, my wife's in the parking lot, and she turns and she screams. And she says, "Not you to look like a serial entrepreneur, you look like a serial killer. We're going home to shave you." Thank God, she said, I had a pretty good head scalp that, I didn't have too many warts or bumps or stuff that I can shave. So for the past, I don't know, more than a decade, I had this look that is more, I get more comments, whether I'm in Italy or whether I'm at Washington, D.C., that, oh, it's Heisenberg and Walter White. And so
right, yes.
I do sign autographs, and I don't break their hearts. I just say, and so, with that said, so I appreciate the time to kind of tell my story. I will say, in coming out of the closet several years ago as a entrepreneur, but more importantly as a dyslexic, I look at prick as D-chirp.
interesting.
Yeah, and so kind of looking, and I've heard many times, 'cause I'm old enough to know, it's not what is done to you or happens to you, it's how you react. And I kind of think that's what you guys are really the key to what you're trying to do. And if I look back as, over my lifetime, and to give you some context, and we'll probably talk about Austin later and her great book, but my context, I had two parents came from, poor backgrounds, but they were lucky to have education that took them up by the bootstraps. And they were two entrepreneurs, and God willing, they will both be 90 in January. They were born the same year, 1931, on January 28th, and they met at a calendar. And my mom thought it was a pickup line to say January 28th is my birthday too. And long story short, they end up having a successful career, building several companies, having 8 children. And in this time of COVID, my parents have been divorced for many years, but my dad lives down in Florida. He's doing good near my sister. My mom lives in DC area. And every Sunday at 1 o'clock, we have a Zoom call, and to keep up. And that's a way of we're doing communications and doing that. But one of the earliest memories I remember of being pricked was being in 2nd grade. And they always do these tests of, how you're doing, and this thing called phonics that I still can't spell. But they call my parents in, and they say to my parents, they say, "Oh, Mike has flunked phonics." And I'm saying, what's that mean? I have no idea what that means, but I did know that there was this thing called the SRA reading group that, I don't know, you guys are too young for this, but they had this reading group based on both color and your ability to read. Well, no one knew what dyslexia was back then, and I was never diagnosed, with it, but I have severe dyslexia, so I see the world, very different than most kids. So I was always stuck, and I'm also colorblind, so I had a double whammy, right? So I would go from, I think, the green group to the yellow to the gold and all that. I never got out of the green, I'm still not out of the green, and thank God for Audible, because I could at least listen to great books and do that, and many times written or talked about by their own author. But to kind of continue the top, we're talking about, haziness and smoke. I've never been a smoker, maybe occasional cigar to celebrate something, but I'm not a smoker. But I put my pricks in several categories, and that is up in smoke, summer in smoke, crash and burn, a smoke signal, and smoke on the water.
Okay, you're going to have to email those to me,
Yeah,
because I can't write that fast.
I will.
And we are seriously collecting all of the innuendos around being pricked.
So the first one, again, learning that I had dyslexia, which should have been a sign, and maybe that was a smoke signal, but it should have been a sign that, I was going to have challenges. And I've written about this quite a bit, about dyslexia. And there's, you all, if you follow it, the common thing, people like, more common as far as entrepreneur is Richard Branson. And I think he was famous as saying, who the hell would come up with a name like dyslexia for dyslexic? And I said, yeah, I can't spell it. I can never spell it. Even with spell check, I can't spell it. Why don't we just call it Bob? That way it's B-O-B. And I know I have Bob. And I can tell the parents and kids that suddenly have Bob that don't worry, it's a curse for academics, but it's a gift in life. And I joined a group here called the Entrepreneurs, I got to remember it, DEN, the Dyslexic Entrepreneur Network. I started out wrong, right? And one of our first speakers was Chuck Schwab. And Chuck Chuck was, we had it over at George Lucas's, and I think he's a dyslexic too. I know Steven Spielberg wasn't diagnosed till he was 62. But so we had it over there, and Chuck was talking to parents, to other dyslexic, fellow dyslexic, and Chuck wasn't diagnosed until his son Michael was 11 years old. And Michael took the test, and he found he was dyslexic. And Chuck said, "Maybe I'll take the test too." And he was 40 something, and he took it. And he, diagnosed dyslexic. So part of that is, one thing of being, I guess, pricked in life. But that was a pain in the ass going through school up until I went. And so I grew up in a Roman Catholic family. So I went to St. Anne's, St. Elizabeth, St. John, and in the DC area. And so I went to St. John's. And the next major time that I remember that I was pricked was kind of devastating and actually set the course for my life, to tell you the truth. And I think about it, it's one of those things that you say, if it was a movie, this would be that point where it just quits. And then you put the vignettes of, okay, this happened afterwards. But what happened, I'm sure a lot of people go through it. And so I would struggle to get D's. I would struggle to not get an F and to pass, and flunked algebra, at least 3 times. The only reason I got through summer school, because I don't know, maybe I was nice to the teacher and fetched him an apple or whatever, but it sure the hell wasn't my grade. And maybe just felt sorry for me. And, many dyslexics become the class clown. And so I was, I took that moniker as well. But so I'm sitting there. I don't know if you've taken, but people used to take tests that say, where are your career paths? Where are you going? And unlike India, where you actually end up, you had little choice, and I have many friends that work in India, a lot of friends, you're set for life or not, how you take tests and how well you do on them. Well, so I took this thing that said I would be, X, Y, Z. And I'm sitting there with my academic advisor in, junior high and high school at this Roman Catholic military school in DC, all boys school. And the guy turns to me and said, Ryan, you're a loser. And I'm paraphrasing, because this is basically what I read. He may have said something else, but this is the subtitle. Ryan, you're a loser. First of all, don't even think about going to college, because that ain't happening. And secondly, if you, not that it's going to happen, if you did, you never get through it. And so, basically fill in the blank, you're a loser, you're lazy, you're dumb, which is so typical of how people characterize dyslexic.
Right.
Move forward from the pain. And that was painful. To this day, it's still painful. And what makes it even more painful, it was a Catholic priest, and so told me that. What that did for my life as a individual, as a person, and as a dyslexic, motivated the hell out of me. I did get that. I was an artist. I'm a 4th generation artist. Both my grandparents were artists. My grandfather did the series of paintings during the WPA down in Atlanta. He was on the Atlanta Constitution for 50 years as an artist. My mom's an artist, at 90, she still paints. She went to the Corcoran School of Art. So I had art. So I did this art portfolio, and I was accepted in the Rhode Island School of Design. But I at that last minute, ended up going to Regis University, Regis College in Denver, Jesuit College, where my dad went, my sister went, my brother went, So we went there, the legacy there. Went there as a dyslexic. My next prick there was another priest who, when I went to college, I was, let's just say, over 200 pounds. I'm only 5'8". Imagine, if you will, what I looked like. And I was always called Big Mike, but I wasn't 6 feet tall. I would always say, I'm the right weight. I'm just the wrong height. I should be.
That's absolutely right.
Yeah. So anyway, I'm sitting there, and the priest, I decided, because I'm not fitting your typical, thespian background as far as, who could be on stage. But I decided I'd try out, and he said, you know what, why don't you be a stage manager? So I was a stage manager, did that for the first series of plays. And then, he saw that, I had something. I never acted in high school and stuff like that. He said, you know what, maybe you should try out for the play. And I said, oh, really? He said, yeah, I think you could probably do it. And of course, here comes the prick, right? And I said, okay, what's this coming up with? Well, he said, Mike, you're kind of a good looking guy, and I think you can act, from what I can see, what you're doing. But there's only one little problem that you have to do the next month and a half. And I said, okay, what's that? He said, oh, you got to lose 50 pounds.
Oh, jeez. What?
So I lost 50 pounds.
Whoa.
Mike.
That's me. And that's I was the leading role in Tennessee Williams' Summer and Smoke. He was the actor was from, if you don't know, the stories about a woman. I'll never forget some of the words he said. I feel like a water lily. I feel like a water lily on a Chinese lagoon. And for my lines, all I can tell you is that my name was John Buchanan from Johns Hopkins, not Johns Hopkins. But so anyway, that was for the next 3 years. Unlike the other priest who told me that I would never go to college, I ended up going to college. I ended up being the lead role in, I think about 3 or 4 productions. I was in 19 different productions there. I graduated in 3 years, top of my class, top of my with honors, National Honor Society, which I couldn't even spell in high school. I'm in the Jesuit National Honor Society in college. Someone asked me to come be the junior class president. I said, but I have enough credits, I can graduate. But so anyway, I graduated 3 years, and all the quote accolades. And that's not unique to me. That's really what dyslexics do. We tend to, when given the ability to build our own system, our own prickless system, our own seamless system, we're able to build a world that is, less driven by others' expectations. And so when you do that, that's a little bit different than others. So I finished my hospital healthcare career there, and then because my parents designed building hospitals all over the world, I decided to go into healthcare management, and I did that, and I can tell you a lot of great stories there. But that's in general, I had great mentors. Didn't have a lot of people get pricked by they call it bosses and stuff like that. I was in the Daughters of Charities, and so this is my nuclear family, and so I'm the guy there with a mustache. I would guess I was looking like Magnum PI or something like that.
Yeah, that's very late 70s, early 80s look there, Mike.
Yeah. 1978 or so. Then my family I talk to every week, and my mom in the middle. She still plays tennis. I play tennis today. So then I got into healthcare management. Like I said, I really didn't have much to talk there as far as negativity. But the next time, I really, because I was an entrepreneur, I got really bored and being dyslexic and having this entrepreneur parents who would start publishing companies and start all sorts of, healthcare companies. So I took a challenge where I was going to build a new hospital. And it was really within a smaller system. This was after I left the Daughters of Charity. And people said, Mike, it ain't going to work. It's going to fail. Everything you think of negativity or whatever, and you dart doubt or whatever. But because I'm dyslexic, I remember it being in this room, and it was almost like a beautiful mind, not mine, but just what I did. I put Post-it notes in 4 walls, everything from processes that have to do with the Joint Commission. That was actually before that, was Medicare certification, what staffing, what medical staff or whatever. So, I can do it in my head, but it's a messy closet, as we say with our son, who also has challenges there. But really to reach out and say, okay, this is what it looks like. And again, be an artist. And then this is what I went down, checking those things off. From people telling me it can't be done. Okay, one step at a time, it can be done. And did that. So that was, kind of an interesting challenge, really, for about 15, 20 years when I ran hospitals. I'm a fully recovered hospital CEO by 1999.
Fully
I went through
recovered. Okay, you and I need to talk. I think there's some therapy sessions in there.
Yeah. Several full 12-step programs of not being a hospital CEO now, right? and so then I was in 2001. I was regent for Louisiana and for the American College Healthcare Executives. I've been a member of the college in 1982. My dad was a fellow and stuff like that. Then I transitioned I started my own company back in 99. And then I had a gig in this place called New York. And so April 1st, believe it or not, 2001, I went to New York. And because I was bi-coastal, going back and forth to San Francisco, my wife and I would meet up, every other week in San Francisco, or most of the time I was traveling around or would live out of the Millennial. Anyway, so come a few weeks before 9/11, I get a kind of a prick issue. And what happened was that they came to me and said, Mike, I don't know, this isn't really, it was a contract. This thing is really working out. So, my wife and I were dancing in the middle of the World Trade Center stuff. I go in at 6 o'clock in the morning, watch everyone else come in around 9:30. We had our office on the 85th floor, just had it redone on World Trade Center 2. And, there's my badge, there's my badge in the World Trade Center. And I, carried that in my wallet behind me. So I got pricked a few weeks before the World Trade Center, and they flew the second plane into the 82nd floor the 85th floor of the World Trade Center where my office was. Fortunately, only because most people didn't come into the office until about 9:30. We only lost, I think we lost one person out of a whole floor. But that taught me, first of all, they call me the miracle man. I'll finish up with my last prick. Not because of what I've done, but because of what people have done for me. And one of them would be that, going back to the people telling my parents they were not, Mike had flunked phonics, to the guy said, Mike, you're never going to go to college. And I graduated in 3 years and moved quickly. And then, I became an entrepreneur because 40% of all entrepreneurs are dyslexic. And it's because we see the world differently, and we create new industries like Chuck Schwab did, or Richard Branson did, or whoever. And so that's a little bit different. And then finally, 9 years ago on September 18th, 2011, the 10th anniversary of the World Trade Center, my wife was trying to get me in shape, and I was in pretty good shape, but I said with the doctor, I said, can I get a note? Can I get a prick note to kind of not go work out? And the doctor says, nah, you're good. You're good. And so we went to the boot camp and stuff like that. And then on Sunday, September, I call it the smoke on the water, because they were at a kids' children's party. And my son's best friend at the time. And, it was like almost an all-day party. They had, this was in Marin, they had a pool, and then they had one of these slip and slide things that, forts that you go down or whatever. And I was the only one that went down. As an adult, I went down and slid it down or whatever. And then they started doing the piñata. And so they threw the piñata and the stick broke. And I said to the father, I said, let me run out to the car. My son Jacob always has some bat or stick or some sport things. I go out to the car, come back in, give him the stick and say, here, try this. And then poof, felt like I was shot. I don't remember this. The rest of what I tell you is all secondhand. I fell to the ground, luckily in water. So I say smoke or burnt on the water, fell in the water. It was light, but I fell down. People thought I was choking or whatever. So one guy picked me up, and I was over, let's say 215 or so pounds. And the guy tries to pick me up and do a Heimlich. Later, one of the kids said, why did Mike, all the kids call me Mike, why did Mike turn blue? And I realized later I had a sudden cardiac arrest. Two women my wife starts CPR. They said, you can't do this. You got to pull her off, because even though she was a lifeguard and trained, these two women, one no more than, maybe fit, not about 100 pounds. It's not even that. She's about 5 feet tall. And the other woman, they start doing the CPR on me. And they did that for over 5 minutes. And they, the story ends good, but, they did it for 5 minutes. And the one of the women who, had a kid who was also in my son's class, said, I was told later, said, was pushing down on me and said, you will not die. You got a 6-year-old to raise. And so, as I say, I often, if I'm going to be in the newspaper, I'd rather be on the front page than in the obituary. So these are my two heroes, Mickey, who was the one doing this chest compression, and Jennifer, who was doing the mouth-to-mouth, that her daughter got so upset, why is mommy kissing another man? Thank God she did. and so that is, I got pricked by not having a great heart, but now I do. Had open heart surgery, and that was 9 years ago next week. So that is where my continued story is on being pricked. Hopefully it gives you some insight of who I am. And again, from pain comes prosperity, or from pain comes success, and using it. Again, not what happens to you. And again, whoops, there goes a phone, a spam caller. And really trying to take what's been done to you or happens to you and really turn it around and make it a success for you and others. And I mentor probably over my lifetime over and because they remain with me, over 50 people, and 99%, I just had someone ask me yesterday, 99% don't look like me. They're either female, they're a person of color, person of a different religion, country, or whatever. And so, I've been blessed in giving, the grace of God. Here I am, I was born in the US, right? Not born in someplace in China or someplace underserved in Africa or even a bad place in the US, right? And so however I can, not complain about being pricked. I mean, I get it, but again, it's what you do, what you have. So happy to answer any questions you guys got.
Well, I don't even know where to start. Like, I have chills. So first of all, Mike has been a mentor of mine. When I told him last year that I wanted to start my own company, he reached right out to me and just offered. And so I have the world to thank you for, because you've always been there and supported me. And the same, I'm a female, and you just said you can do this. And when I was faltering and saying I'm going back into healthcare administration, you said, don't keep the path, stay
Blame
the
me.
path. Exactly. And so, your stories, they touch me, and they bring up so many feelings, and one that I'll just share with you. And I didn't know this about you. I didn't know that you had dyslexia, but my brother has traveled the same path that you have with the dyslexia. Again, you guys are about the same age and undiagnosed, and it has created strife for him for a very long time, but he sees the world in a different way.
Yeah.
And so many of the things that you said totally resonate with me. And I'll give you the opportunity to say something, Kevin, because otherwise I'll just go on and on. I'm so touched.
Mike, your story is amazing.
Amazing.
I thank my mom and my dad. And my brothers and sisters, and everyone is in my life. So
Yeah, exactly.
I say that all the time about my parents.
Mm.
So a couple of things I wanted to touch on, and we'll let this conversation go wherever you want. But you said something really interesting towards the end, something that I'm going to challenge our next week's guest on.
Mm-hmm.
You said, and I completely believe it. I said it, in fact, this morning. By virtue of our zip code, we're already in the top 1% of the people in the world. I think that's fascinating, and thank you for acknowledging. But as much as I truly believe that I am part of that 1%, I think you're in that,
You might be in that upper echelon just above that.
Yeah, by virtue of, and to touch on the book we were talking about. So your name is Mike Ryan. We're currently reading a book by a woman named Austin, whose parents named her very.
She's a white man. She's a white man named Austin. He was born in a country club.
Right? That's what being a Black female, that was exactly their whole point.
Her
Was
grandmother
if we
too.
give you, yes,
Right.
true. But if we give you a white man's name, it will open doors for you, which it did. So the book we're referring to, just for the audience's knowledge, is I'm Still Here, Black Dignity in a World Made for Whiteness, Austin Channing Brown. This is what it looks like. And you can also download it on Audible, and I have it flagged. It's Kevin's book. He loaned it to me and said, I want to bring up some points in it, because it really does talk about the lens that those unconscious biases. I was saying to Kevin, like, you don't even realize, as even a white female, there are lots of elements in here that Austin referenced that resonated with me as a white woman, but as a woman, not just being white, but a woman. I have some of the same experience, but her as a Black woman being looked at through the white lens. And there were so many great perspectives about what white privilege looks like and how that white privilege is imposed upon a person of color.
I think one of the most sobering things that she added, besides the letter to her unborn son, was, and I apologize, I can't, I mean, her name is Austin Channing Brown, but the other authors that she mentions in there, as a dyslexic, it's alphabet soup going into my head. I mean, literally.
Mhm.
So it's no disrespect, but she made reference, Kevin, to an author that said, you know, do you think this will change, you know, soon or immediate, whatever? And he basically, to paraphrase this author that she quoted, she said, you know, there was, you know, in 17, or let's say 16, I don't know the exact dates because there's numbers here, right, for dyslexic, but let's say in 1863, you know, blacks had gone 2 or 3 generations where they lived in slavery. And more than likely that in 63, that black slave was going to have a child and a grandchild, and a grandchild more than likely would be a black slave. So nothing that was in the past or nothing was in the future would necessarily change their state in a society. And so she asked that question from today, and we're dealing with Black Lives Matter, we're dealing with, you know, systemic racism, and or just, you know, racism, then systemic racism, that, you know, she wanted to be hopeful, but she also said, let's put a death to hope, right? And that's part of her chapter, and I'm not being derogatory, that's almost a quote to what she says, and it's very profound. But she says, you know, when I look now, and I think her husband's name is Tommy, and I don't know her son's name. If the son, I assume, was born in about 2018, the book was written. I don't know how much is going to change going forward to her son and her grandchildren going forward or whatever. If you look out 100 years from now, will we have change? Sure, more than likely, hopefully will. But that is very sobering. You know, I drove across the Golden Gate Bridge in my 15-year-old son, who, you know, we was just, you know, and this was a Black Lives Matter, and we must have had easily 500 police officers holding the line so people wouldn't block the Golden Gate Bridge, and we were going, you know, bumper to bumper and stuff like that. And, you know, will that make change in people? And you know, I'm not going to begin to say, I mean, the stuff she said, you know, I grew up in DC and went to school at St. John's in DC, went to George Washington, stuff like that. And I worked at Providence, which was an underserved Roman Catholic hospital, and charter signed by this guy named Abe Lincoln, you know. And, you know, after reading Austin's book, you know, I think it should be required reading to everyone, and applaud to Austin, you know, and their parents, and, you know, a lot of stuff. And I assume she's a bit very younger than I am, but the stuff that she actually talked about, some of the stuff I lived through. And so, you know, I'm hopeful that change will happen. But I'm going to share this with my son, the audiobook, to listen to it, because he's basically thinks that, you know, we, you know, basically should do everything immediately. And we say, you know, we agree, we're with you, but how do you do that? And that's the biggest challenge we have. And so, you know,
that's absolutely the biggest challenge. And it's part of the reason that we're having these dialogues is that, you know, when I'm in a leadership role working with individuals within organizations, one of the most powerful tools that I possess is going and asking the people who do the work how we should do the work. And so that's one of the premises behind, let's just start these dialogues. Let's just start this conversation. And I know we've been talking about these issues for a very, very long time. But the questions that we're putting out are, how do we make change? So let's have the dialogue, and we understand that there are issues out there. So what should we do? What are your ideas? How can we do things differently? One is to create that awareness, but then also let's start changing our language. Let's start, I mean, Austin, you know, references that type of thing too. Let's start shattering the current social norms around being white or being Black in America or anywhere. Yeah, and that's what this is all about.
I'll probably say something that's not politically correct, and if this thing's rebroadcast, whatever.
You're in good company.
Yeah,
yeah, you really
and that is, you know, again, I grew up Judeo-Christian values. I converted to Judaism, so I believe in both the Old and the New Testament. I have studied them at least, right? And that is, about the 80s, we had this thing where everyone was a total quality management, TQM,
TQM.
or
Lived
CQI,
it.
continuous. And so, you know, it was like,
Continuous
okay,
quality improvement,
improvement,
or
yeah.
TQM, total
Yeah,
quality management.
right. And you know,
TQI.
I have plenty of books here. And actually, what was his name? Deming. My sister actually worked for Dr. Deming, and at 103, I think he signed me a autograph book or whatever. And that's
Cool.
good. That's great. How do we do improvement? But I part of the issue that I've got, Kim and Kevin, is you know, we have a change, or no, what's the word I want to use? Kind of a movement to have diversity in organizations, and we have a chief diversity officer, or whatever, and that person is suddenly responsible for all that. And I would say, and I've heard it, I'll steal this, as Pablo Picasso said, "Good artists copy, great artists steal." So I'll steal this from somebody, but as CEO, I want to be the chief diversity officer, whether I'm Asian, brown, black,
Yes.
whatever. And I think it's too easy to say, okay, and I understand why they're doing it at Pepsi or Coca-Cola, or, you know, whatever big organization you come. But I think that it's too easy to say, okay, let's go get our chief diversity officer. Kind of what Austin was going at, you know, she said people will throw crap at her and expect
Yes.
her to come up with the answers, when in fact it's just a reflection of their insecurity and what the issue they had. And why should she be burdened with that? And so, you know, I always say, you know, judge me by my actions, not my words, you know, because words are cheap. So
Acta non verba, buddy. And let me tell you this, we could have a whole nother conversation about that topic in and of itself, which means we're going to have you back, because I believe the same thing. A Band-Aid is high. With the pricked movement is creating listening forum facilitators. Like, become certified as someone who actually brings a group of people together and listens to what it is that their concerns are, and strategizes together on how they can make it better right here, right now, in the space they're in. Because it's got to start small, and it's got to start with what we think as a team we can do. How are we going to be able to make it more comfortable for everybody who is in this moment with us together?
right.
You know, that's, for me, that's the whole idea behind grassroots. You know, how can we try and see what's going to work and then promote what does work? Because to your point, you know, great artists steal. So what works? Let's
Right.
find out what works in small batches and then run with it. But we have to ask the question and invite the conversation.
I agree. And this is part of that process, is creating a dialogue here on a grassroots level, and hopefully, you know, we'll start tipping the scales with our viewership to get more people involved in not just talking about it, but actually doing something about it in their organizations, in their neighborhoods. That's kind of what my mindset when Kim and I started planning this. So yeah.
So I recently saw on social media a police officer, and they call him Basketball Cop. Have you seen this social media feed? Where he received a complaint of noise in this relatively poor neighborhood. And I'm trying to think of where it was, but it's escaping me. But anyway, he goes to find out exactly.
Miami. I think it was Miami.
Yeah. Did you hear the story?
No, I saw it.
Yeah. Yeah. Where he goes to, oh, that's right, Miami. Makes sense. So he goes to the neighborhood and, yes, exactly. He goes to the neighborhood and says to the boys, you know, we got a complaint, but you're just playing basketball. And they're like, yeah, we're just playing basketball. So he starts playing basketball with him. He says, you know, just be mindful of how much noise you're making, but don't let it stop, you know, stop you playing and doing this. This is good stuff. And then he started showing up more regularly. And then he started playing basketball and bringing his friends. And then he brought Shaquille O'Neal. And Shaquille played basketball with them. And Shaquille gave them some good life lessons about, you know, be who you are and respect who you are. Respect your parents. You know.
Dr. Shaquille O'Neal, by the way.
Dr. Shaquille O'Neal, you know, and he is an example. He said, I took, you know, the being raised and living in a poor, you know, environment and said, this is what's basketball is what's going to get me out of this.
Listen
So I'm
to your
going to
parents.
listen to your parents because they said, go play basketball. You're tall. You can make this happen. And he started playing and practiced and practiced and practiced. And he's a shining example of taking what pricked him, which is, you know, his social standing, you know, being raised in a poor environment, and said, I'm going to use this as motivation to be the best that I can be. So.
Yeah.
So completely off topic.
Kevin's going to throw us a curveball. All right. Are
That's
you ready
okay.
for this?
I like curveballs.
He's got some good ones. He's got good ones.
This one isn't as good, but I do want to talk about this. Your bio is very impressive. Most of which I didn't understand because it's all about the medical stuff. But
Don't worry, I don't understand it either, Kevin.
He can't even read it.
Just lives it. I should be 100. I should be 180 years old because I always done 5 things at once. So
Yes, sir.
well, my question is at the very bottom of that bio, it says White House intern. Please tell me about that.
okay, so I started out as when I was at. You saw the photos of me when I was after I lost my 50 pounds,
Yeah.
and so I went and I got out of college at it wasn't a COVID time, so I won't compare it to what the recent grads are going through right now. But when I got out, I actually graduated in 3 years with 2 degrees, one in international relations and the other in communications. So, you know, it was, and part of that in my year before graduating, the summer before I graduated, I was fortunate to have an internship. And that internship was in 1980. So I'm sure if I had an internship in 81 or if I had one in 92, that would have been with a Reagan or Clinton or whoever. But my internship was with the Carters. And so I tell this story. I said, what happened? I'm at UCSF with Digital Orthopedic Group Advisory Board. I'm chair of that. And I asked this group of digital health people, I said, what happened on October 1st, 1924?
What just happened to our internet?
Oh, you lose it? Oh, you lose the internet? Are you there?
There you go. So
Okay.
sorry. We
That's
thought
right.
we lost you. I was,
No.
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 Yeah, so,
So-
okay. You were talking
So
about
I had
being
this group of
Carters.
people. What happened October 1st, 1924? To this group of digital health people. And I get strange looks. And of course, dyslexics is one of the things you remember. You have memories of numbers, even though you can't write or add numbers, but they stick in your mind, right? And no one knew. And I said, well, it's the time. What happened October 1st, 1924? The first president was born in a hospital in the U.S. It was Jimmy Carter. And Jimmy will be 96 on October, and less than a month. And Rosalind just turned 93 on August 18th. But so anyway, so I did not a residency. I did an internship at the White House, and it was back in the day. So I'll date myself. Pennsylvania Avenue was open. So you could drive down there. It's for all the school children reading now, and the way visit in the future. Pennsylvania Avenue was open. I went to George Washington University years later, but that was right there, right across the street. And the street in between the Treasury, which is adjacent to the White House, is where I park my little car. So I drive in my car I think every few weeks. We got a different Secret Service badge. Up in there at 7 o'clock in the morning and leave at 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning. And it was a pretty heady thing. I was a coordinator of artists and athletes. So that meant I got to meet a lot of people like Jimmy Buffett and knew his home phone numbers, and Charlie Daniels, who just passed away. But also I worked with Brig Owens, who was a Washington football club player. And he was with the National Players Association, stuff like that, and Willie Davis. So all these great football players. And one time I went up to I was at the Democratic convention in 1980, and I was assigned to bring people up to the literally the presidential suite, which had the president in it, unlike a executive. So I met this tall guy, 6'4", probably, 280 or whatever. And his name was Rosie Greer. And Rosie, for those that know a little history, unfortunately, what was it, February 4th, 1968, when Martin Luther King was killed, Sirhan Sirhan, had to escape after he shot Bobby Kennedy some weeks later. And he went, and Rosie, which was, he used to be with LA Raiders, I think it was. He actually captured Sirhan Sirhan with Rayford Johnson, I think, too. And so anyway, he was Rosie, I took him, escorted him up, and started going up the elevators in like the Hilton or wherever it was. And the doors would open, it'd be me and Rosie Greer, who was a lot taller than me. People see him, and I said, I assume you're not going to the presidential suite. And they said, okay, thank you. And I would just go and take him up and meet the president and stuff like that. So I had some great times there. I would call people and say, I was 20 years old. This is Mike Ryan calling on behalf of the president, Mrs. Carter at the White House. We'd like to have you join us on Labor Day weekend or something like that. So it was fun.
Oh,
it was a great time. So I've lived several lifetimes in my life, and I've been blessed. So, it's all good. So.
Oh my gosh, Mike.
I was never pricked there.
I also drove down Pennsylvania Avenue. I went to Howard University.
Oh, wonderful. Yeah. Well, unfortunately, I've been to the chapel too many times where the Rankin Chapel, I know well. I was VP of operations at Providence Hospital, and this was 1988 until 1992. And I had a number of, moms that came to me, and their sons were, killed during the, 800 lives were lost during that time because of, the drug wars. And, they would cash in their $10,000 life insurance policies so they could afford the funerals. And, just a tragic time. We also, I had employees that worked for me that were killed, and so, I also had a hit on my head, went from $5,000 to $500. And I had a head of security come to me shaking, another guy about 6'5". I was a coach of the basketball team. I did not play the Providence Hospital basketball. These are kids these are men and later adults that played for DeMatha or, Spring Guard or wherever, right? And so we had a good basketball team. But we had an employee that came to me and was shaking in his shoes because he had knew who someone had killed in our hospital. And I said, well, where are you going to go as far as to work? And he said, I'm going to Lorton to be a security guard. It's safer there. Lorton was a federal prison in Virginia.
Yeah.
So at that time, I decided I didn't want to be a cop anymore, i.e., hospital administrator. I wanted to get out of there. So I went to Louisiana for a decade and enjoyed it there. So, I've had a full life.
Yes, you
And, still have another 33 years or 40, 50 years ago.
Yeah, you do. And it's going to be quite amazing to see where you go and what you do and whose life you impact, because you've already impacted so many in such a positive way. And
I've been blessed.
Well, and I feel blessed to know you, and I'm blessed to introduce you to, Kevin Bowen, who has been a lifelong friend of mine. We've known each other since 8th grade, and since we were 8, since 4th grade, and just incredible. Oh, and there you put her picture up. Look at you. I'm just going to have you on all the time.
Yeah.
I love this. She brought on someone who does all of our graphics.
I know. So we're just going to have you on every week so you can take care of this kind of stuff.
Yeah. So my first company when I was 14 was a graphic design company called MGR Arts. I still have the what's it called around here somewhere, but I did graphic work for not hospitals, for companies and people in DC. So that's when I first started my first company at 14. So I haven't stopped.
Wow.
So salute to, let me get out of her way, Austin Channing Brown.
Yeah, very nice.
Very nice. Thank you for giving that plug to her. We're going to have to reach out to her too and see if she'd like to be on the show. And, we're really setting our sights high, and we've got some ideas for some pretty amazing guests that we'd like to bring on whose stories are inspiring, just, you know, from what the public knows. But the reality is that the stories behind the stories are really those stories of inspiration, like you having dyslexia and all of the accomplishments that you've enjoyed or been blessed with, you know, despite, you know, having that obstacle in front of you. And that's what this is all about. So we thank you from the bottom of my heart. And can we please have you on again? Would you come back and be on the show again?
Sure.
I think we
As
could
long as
talk
I can
for
repeat
hours with
everything.
you.
As long as I can just put
Okay,
ditto, ditto,
listen.
ditto.
You have way more to share, and I know
Let's
it. So.
Let's go to the video.
Yeah, exactly. Cut to the video, which will be this, and I'll call you, and we'll get it all synced up. Kevin, any closing?
You know, I really enjoyed talking with you, Mike.
Same here,
This was indeed a pleasure. Yeah, I really do look forward to having you back on and just catching up with you outside of this.
Absolutely.
Yeah, to our audience, thank you very much for joining us once again. This is a treat for me, certainly, to keep this conversation going about overcoming pricks.
He is vying for overcoming pricks. I'm vying for pricked, because we've all been pricked, and it's what we do with it that makes the difference. We'll see how it comes out.
This has been a fun hour plus, and yeah, thank you all for joining us, and yeah, I'll see you again next week. And
Absolutely. Do we have a guest planned for next week? Do you
We
want
do
to
have a
talk
guest
just a
planned.
moment about your guest for next week?
So many of my friends on Facebook and anyone in the Napa community will know him well. Dr. Pastor Peter Shaw will be with us next week. So Crosswalk Community Church. He's an amazing speaker. He's just an amazing person. And yeah, it'll be a fun conversation.
So wonderful. Okay, well, Mike, any parting words?
Just live life to its fullest every day, because you never know what may happen, what tomorrow may or not bring.
That's so true. So
Very
true. So thanks again, everybody out there in Facebook world. And Mike's got it out on LinkedIn too. I'm not sure how that's going to happen, but you know, thanks for that. We'll see what kind of audience participation. And again, for those of you out there watching, if you would be interested in us writing up the things that we're discovering, please do let us know in the comments. We're trying to get direction about what's going to be valuable to all of you in these conversations and forward movement. Acta non verba. Let's take action, not just talk about it.
Nice.
All right. Well, thanks everybody. Thanks, Mike. We'll chat soon.
Okay, bye.
Bye all.